Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of the Education Corner podcast. Today we are speaking to James Dahl, who is the headmaster at Wellington College. He's the 15th master, and we chat to him about the COVID-19 response at Wellington and the work that Wellington are doing to support the wider community. It's a very interesting conversation, so stay tuned, and I hope that you enjoy.
Thank you very much for giving up your time today, Mr. Dahl, and speaking to me. The focus of our conversation, I've been doing a little bit of research, but what I really was hoping to focus the interview on, to quote Sir Peter Lample, who is the former Wellington College parent, but is also the founder of the Sutton Trust. And he stated that one of the biggest social challenges of our time is the national waste of talent that threatens the economic health of our country. And whilst the income gap between the richest and poorest in society continues to widen, there's still so much more to do to make Britain a country where worth rather than birth defines our destinations. Furthermore, the Sutton Trust goes on to discuss social mobility in Britain is low, and the education opportunities and life chances of a child born today are strongly linked to their parents' socio-economic background. This is the challenge we face, and that's what they state on their website. And I know that Wellington College have been working hard in many areas on this, and I hope through the interview we can demonstrate the work that Wellington College is doing through many, and the work with many charities, schools and organisations to ensure that these issues are being addressed and to help support children and families from all socio-economic backgrounds, especially in the light of the recent COVID-19 and the learning gap that's resulted for many young people. So, first question, how did Wellington College manage to support and provide for the children through the lockdown in March 2020?
Yes, gosh, Chloe, and
that's a big question.
For a huge question. So let's start with an easy one. So is that to cope with our children or those in our partner schools?
I was meaning for that one just the school as a whole and as an umbrella for the partner schools, but yeah. You know, I don't mean in detail. I'm really asking more kind of how you feel you came through it, and
yeah. So I think the biggest challenge that I think every school faced back in those remarkable days in March was was pivoting to delivering everything virtually rather than in person straight away, and we're very lucky at Wellington. We've gone down the route in the last few years of being a Microsoft showcase school and everyone having Microsoft surfaces and doing a lot of our teaching through the Microsoft platform. So when we saw that the closure of schools was imminent, we frantically did a lot of training with everyone on Microsoft Teams, and actually schools closed on that Friday, and we were able to deliver that first week of the Lent term for our current pupils immediately online, which was just phenomenal from our teachers and from our pupils. So we had a week of sort of trialing it all, and then we hit the Easter holidays, and I think it was in those Easter holidays where discussions with the governors and discussions at a sort of leadership team level at Wellington, we came across the issue. Yes, it's really important that we keep education going for our current pupils that are at the college, but it has been a really big strategic piece for Wellington over the last 15 years to do more and more outside of our four walls through partnership with other schools in the local area, through our independent state schools partnership, through our teaching schools partnership that we run. We're one of the few independent schools in the country that is an accredited teaching school, and also with the schools that we've sponsored and looked after. So, for example, the Wellington Academy. So we at that time interested in not only ensuring that we could deliver help and support to our own pupils here at the college, but that we were doing as much as we possibly could for all of those children and all of those schools with whom we are in partnership. And I think that's just so important, really, that schools like Wellington with the resources that we have, when at times of national crisis we should be seeking to help answer society's problems rather than exacerbate any inequalities or problems that there might be. And I think that mission has been actually at the core of Wellington. First of all, since its very foundation, we were founded in the 1850s as a school to look after children who had experienced suffering or disadvantage in their childhood, because it was a school for the orphaned sons of army officers, of soldiers. And then, of course, when Sir Anthony Selden arrived in 2005 as the 13th Master, he came with this a really passionate strategic drive that schools like Wellington shouldn't be an ivory tower keeping the world out, but actually should be a bastion of excellence, sharing expertise and resources with others, a generous partner that gives to the outside world. And I had dinner with Anthony last year, and we're still in touch. I've known him since 1998. He gave me my first ever job in education, Anthony. So I'm very grateful to him in many different ways. But we were talking.
He's still inspiring now.
It's very much so. But at one point in the dinner, he said, James, those that have the most have got to do the most, and he's absolutely right. And that's not coming from a position of Wellington College or schools like us feeling guilty or feeling shame or feeling that we have to justify our existence or apologize for something. It's just a statement of fact that we are blessed with incredible resources, and so when the chips are down, we must be a force for good in the world. So we did loads of things at that time. We helped pay for food packages for children, low-income families, both at our partner schools in Wiltshire, the Wellington Academies down there, but also some of our partner schools in the local area here. And we shared all of our online teaching resources with all of our partner schools in the Independent State Schools Partnership and Teaching Schools Partnership. And we more recently have been putting together a whole program of catch-up sessions. So as we speak today, Chloe, we're in the middle of 27 catch-up sessions that teachers at the college are putting on for pupils that are Independent State School Partnership schools who've missed work. So, whether that's GCSE physics or A-level maths, we're trying our best to sort of reach out and provide that, and actually doing things online is quite useful, actually, because you can have 100 children log into a session on an aspect of GCSE physics rather than just 23 or 24 in a classroom. We've, like so many schools, and I know that up in London, Highgate pushed on this in the early days. We've been collecting laptops from the Wellington community. So we're over 100 now that are laptops that have been cleaned, repurposed, and sent out to our partner schools for those low-income families who just need that digital support. They have that digital poverty that doesn't allow their children to access education if they're self-isolating or at home. And one of the things that we're really proud of as well is in the last year we've set up an educational grant giving function at the college. So we are committing some of our own commercial revenue that we're making from our international schools and from our commercial activities, and we are giving grants to local partner schools. So we've given 2 grants of 6-figure grants to 2 local trusts in the Crowthorne and Wokingham area, specifically focused around the attainment gap, the COVID attainment gap. So the what's the word I'm looking for? The applications that they put in to us were specifically about how they were going to target children who'd suffered because of COVID in terms of their educational advancement, and we've given those grants, and we're now watching them do that work. So there was a huge,
incredible, and the educational grants were generated from within Wellington College itself, separately to the Prince Albert Foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very keen moving forward that our gosh, for want of a better phrase, our sort of social impact work, our sort of public benefit or social responsibility work sort of falls into three areas. One is around partnerships, direct partnerships with schools. So that might be teacher to teacher, or teacher to pupil, or pupil to pupil. The second branch of our work is widening access, and you mentioned the Prince Albert Foundation there, and that is our sort of transformational bursary scheme that we're sort of really keen to grow at the moment. And then this third branch of our work is this new educational grant, and we've actually just appointed someone to come in and lead that entire process. And
does it have a name?
No, it's just our the educational
and it's
grant.
Is that part of the Independent State School Partnership, or is it a separate thing?
It's a separate thing, Chloe, but in the very first year that we did it, which was this year, we went deliberately narrowly with just a couple of academy trusts in the local area who know us really well, and we know them really well. And the idea is that we can build this program so that we can give more grants, we can give bigger grants, and we could perhaps go geographically further afield in due course. So we've started very close to home as a sort of trial run in this first year. And the theory behind that, the thinking behind that is genuinely to use our commercially generated revenue not for the benefit of our own pupils, but for the benefit of those in the communities and in partner schools around us. I'm acutely aware that in the run-up to the general election last year, with the Abolish Eton campaign and the Labour Party with a significant series of reform proposals for the independent sector, there, a lot of schools felt under pressure to sort of justify their existence more. We're driven by that. We're driven simply by what we think is the morally right thing to do, and we genuinely do feel that the morally right thing for a school like Wellington to do is to use our resources not just to benefit our own pupils here, but to benefit those beyond our four walls too.
Very much so. And have you had any specific feedback? Have you any kind of anecdotes that you could share with me, perhaps, of from the children that did benefit from the grant, of how it's helped them going forward?
Not yet, because it's
still early days.
It is, yeah, absolutely. So the grants are only made at the beginning of this term, so we haven't done any information gathering on it, but we will.
And please do share with me.
Yeah, there will be a process of reviewing all of those grants and seeing the impact that they've made. So in due course, we will gather that. And actually, this is what part of having someone appointed who will be in charge of the process. They will not just oversee the application process and the giving process, but they'll then analyse the impact of those grants in due course, which is fantastic.
I was actually listening to a webinar on the TES given by Mark Henzer, and one of the things that he was describing was how some children during the lockdown were actually kind of reduced, if they had anything at all, to trying to do their online learning through a tiny mobile phone, and perhaps in a crowded flat where there was lots of disturbances, and it was just so difficult for so many young people. Yeah,
absolutely. Imagine if you're one of four children in a crowded house and with one device between you all. I couldn't agree more. And actually we did have an issue with one of our own pupils, one of our Prince Albert pupils here, who, when the schools were closed, just didn't have Wi-Fi at home. So we all immediately sort of went online straight away, and so we used our Prince Albert Foundation funds to be able to install Wi-Fi at home for this pupil and their family, and something that many people just take for granted, that you have a device, you have Wi-Fi, and that you could just log on to Teams or Zoom and get going the next week. But that
and it was so instant as well. It was such an instant, an instant kind of, this is how we're going to be doing things.
Yeah, very much so. And of
there's
course,
very little time for preparation from a home perspective. initiative.
Absolutely, and of course the many state schools and pretty much all independent schools wanted to do a brilliant job from the very. That's not to say that there were some schools who didn't want to do a good job, but it was that aspiration. We certainly here had an aspiration that, right, schools are closed, we've got to deliver the best possible educational provision we can from Monday. How are we going to do it? But I can imagine the challenges of leading a school in an area of lower income inequality, where there's a high proportion of children on free school meals, and that digital poverty is there in so many homes. How do you suddenly deliver online education when you just don't have the infrastructure to do it? So Mark,
it was a big, and I understand that within the school some of the children actually did it. Was it the Wheeler?
Yes.
Donate? No, sorry, I'm talking the wrong thing. It was a donation for education set up by 3 of your children.
Yeah, that's right.
At the school, literally for this purpose, to provide electronic devices to children that perhaps didn't have access to them, or didn't have them available to them to be able to do their online lessons.
That's right. So 3 of our year 11 pupils who did it as we run a global citizenship program on a Wednesday afternoon, and they did it as a service project. So they absolutely found a local computer IT consultant who could wipe the devices. They worked with the head of modern languages to find a way to collect devices from staff, from pupils, and from home, and then have delivered them to partner schools, which is terrific.
A lovely initiative, and a reflection on, I think, the ethos of the school, and the fact that the children clearly feel that spirit of philanthropy kind of coming through. Just going, so I know that there's also Wellington Connect, which I think you've kind of touched on a little bit, but I imagine that also kind of came into action even more during the lockdown, as a way of supporting youngsters and trying to help the children in whatever way, because it's quite an interesting online platform that you have, and it plays a very big part in college life.
Fascinating thing, Welly Connect. It's we sort of think of it as LinkedIn for the Wellington community.
Yeah, when I was reading it, I was a bit jealous.
It all came from about 3 or 4 years ago, where
I can't remember the numbers now, but it was something like 28,000 people.
Well, it was born from a conversation between
28,000.
The previous master to me, Julian Thomas, and a chap called Murray Lindo, who's head of the Wellington community. So he runs the office that looks after relationships with alumni and with current parents, and our parents association, all of that, and me, and we were trying to work out how we could harness. First of all, we're trying to work out how many individual people we thought there were within the Wellington community. If you count the Wellington community as every old boy, every old girl, every past parent, every past member of staff, and we reckoned that there must be at least 30 or 40,000 people in the world, if not more, who sort of fit.
You could all be part of this connection.
Absolutely, and
quite a powerful connection, may I say?
Absolutely, and how can we get them together, and that was where Welly Connect was born. So and it was phenomenal during lockdown, actually, because for our upper sixth pupils here who had their IB and A-level exams torn from them, and we taught through to the end of the syllabus, and we did some university bridging courses, but we also introduced an LBW course, which has nothing to do with cricket, but was Life Beyond Wellington. And it's actually lockdown version 1 gave us an excuse to do something we've been talking about for years and years and years, which is actually delivering some proper post-school careers, life advice. and we harnessed the Wellington communities from that. So we got old boys and old girls, we had current parents, former parents, who delivered a whole series of webinars and online networking events for our pupils and for pupils in our partner schools to hear about things that they just wouldn't normally hear about in the summer term of the upper sixth, because they'd be doing their A levels. And so
do you plan to continue it? It sounds fascinating.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds
absolutely.
It sounds like it's something that they'll never forget.
Absolutely, and of course, the joy of these things, as is happening now, is we recorded them all, so we now have a bank of talks and webinars from all manner of different members of the Wellington community, and it is something we are already continuing with. So that there were.
So when I was reading about it over the weekend, I mean, LinkedIn is becoming ever more powerful. I make all the young people that I know, it's one of the first things I say to them: get on there, start connecting.
Yeah.
But to be a part of that network and to have so many dynamic and interesting people that can help the young people coming through the school so much.
That's right.
It's an amazing resource.
And one of the most powerful things that we've been able to do with that over the last 4 or 5 years is extending that to the sixth formers and the graduates from the Wellington Academy in Wiltshire, so that they have been able to take advantage of mentoring, of apprenticeships, of career advice from OWs or current parents here at Wellington College, and you know that is really important as well, because it's that cultural it's those networks and that young people need access to as well, and
it's not just about the A-level grades, is it? It's about how to go forwards with their future.
That's exactly it. So really exciting.
Very exciting. Another question. Mrs. Susie Longstaff, the headmistress at Putney High, recently quoted Putney High leaver who wrote an article in the autumn 2020 edition of our magazine Education Choices. And she said, the feeling of uncertainty about my future is something I will not quickly forget. Have you had your children from Wellington? Is that kind of a shared emotion? How did you help them with the uncertainty and the changes? It was all quite a difficult time for many of them.
Yeah, it was, and Chloe, I have to be honest that sense of anxiety born out of uncertainty is acutely felt by the young at the moment, and in a strange way, last year's upper six and those leavers, the experience for them was 2 terms of normality and then the most incredibly traumatic bereavement.
I think they did feel that.
It was a bereavement
it felt like their rite of passage was taken away from them, and I think many of them were much more saying, oh, it's a holiday, but to the youngsters, actually, I think they'd have preferred to take the exams.
Absolutely, 100%. I do not know of any of last year's leavers from Wellington who feel satisfied by what happened. They've got their centre assessed grades, they've got they've got what they need to move on to university, but they don't feel happy with that. They wanted the opportunity to validate themselves, to test themselves against a nationally standardized set of exams, and I've spoken to a few of them, and they don't necessarily feel like those grades that they've got next to their name and will have next to their name for the rest of their life, that they really earned them, even though of course they did, because it was the product of 5 terms of work that enabled us to give them those grades. So but in a strange way, I think it's this current upper sixth who are perhaps not at more of a disadvantage, but last year's upper six had 2 wonderful terms and then this horrific traumatic bereavement. This year's upper six have seen it coming for the last, they knew, they came back to school in September knowing things weren't going to be the same, knowing that they couldn't have an upper six quite like they wanted to, knowing that they weren't going to be able to have even things like the 18th birthday parties that they wanted.
My daughter turned 18 last weekend. She's taking her A-levels this year. She's already done 6 months of lockdown. Every day they go into school we're grateful for, but we don't know how long it will be. It is so, and that was going to be my next question. How do schools, how do we as communities support these children who, I mean, the news was it a week ago when Wales have said that they're no longer doing the exams. It's such an uncertain time and a very stressful time.
It is. I think. And wrong decision by Wales. I think the vast majority of people in the English education system, actually probably both state and independent, would say that and I agree with this wholeheartedly, that the Welsh government, I think, have thrown in the towel far too early on that one. The approach we've taken at Wellington is partly in terms of messaging. So we've acknowledged that there's uncertainty with the community and with the upper six in particular, but we've just tried to focus with them and their parents on controlling the controllables, and there are some things that that aren't in their control, but that's fine. In life there's always things that are beyond our control, and the very first assembly that we gave at the beginning of this term, we just talked about steady and consistent work, just staying on top of things, and getting your coursework or with your IB or IAs, your extended essay, get them done out the way, get your UCAS done early, be in control of what you can control, and you'll be fine. Because if exams take place next summer, which I suspect they will, actually, I'm pretty sure that
I'm hopeful.
And Williamson, they're absolutely want.
They've been marginally delayed today.
Indeed. So you'll be in a good position if your exams are done. If the worst came to the worst and exams were cancelled again, which I think there's a 1% chance of it happening, then Slow and Steady still has built up that bank of evidence, which means we can give you a good grade for your centre assessed grade. But I think I think
that a few of them that I've spoken to, certainly, I think they feel under more pressure because their concern is that everything counts. So if you get one bad essay, then that is a disaster because it could mean a downgrade. If they don't get to sit the exams. I think it's kind of, it feels like it's an unrelenting pressure now to perform consistently. And not to have those bad days where I do it, we all do it, we make mistakes, or we go off and we misread the title.
Absolutely. I remember getting in my lower sixth Latin exam, Chloe, I remember getting 14%, and I was top of the year group. There was 3 of us doing A-level Latin. I came top of the year group with 14%. And a few months later, I was sitting on a Cambridge offer to read classics, and I ended up getting, my A grades. Getting 14% in one exam didn't mean that I was a failure or that I was no good, but there is that pressure, undoubtedly, and so not delivering constant messages from the top that says, you've got to ace everything, every assignment counts. We can help with that pressure by messaging in the right way, because the young today, you just said it yourself, Chloe, they put enough pressure on themselves. They don't need their head or their deputy head academic cracking the whip as well. And in fact, far from it, they need kindness and understanding and support from their school, I think, rather than constant pressure, whip cracking, and if you don't get 90% plus in every test, then you're a failure. It's just not helpful.
And how, through the work that you're doing with the educational grant and with the Independent State School Partnership, how are you able to support the children kind of from a mental health perspective as well? I imagine that there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes.
Yes. Absolutely. So the part of the proposals that were put to us by both of the academy trusts to whom we gave grant had their menu of things that they wanted to do with those grants. And actually, if they hadn't put that as on that list, I think we would have insisted that they do. And certainly more difficult for us to have a direct impact on that sort of thing, because pastoral care is so tied up in relations and relationships immediately with you in your school. So I would say it's probably an area that we have been able to do less than the pure academic side of things. But it's certainly been a huge focus at this end with our own pupils. Our deputy head safeguarding, who's our mental health lead, actually wrote an entire curriculum which was a recovery and reintegration curriculum, and that was sent to parents and sent to the pupils before they returned in September. And we started with a survey and questionnaire of all pupils and all parents to get an idea of where each individual child was within their own mental health before they even came back to school, because I think what we predicted, and actually I think this has probably been,
I think people are only just beginning to realise now how they were affected.
Totally.
Then. It's kind of a slow thing to digest.
There were those that had been pastoral concerns in the past who actually had really good lockdowns and came down in a better place than we thought. There were those who had never been on our radar before, but who came back with things they needed to work through. And then over the last 3 or 4 months, I think all schools will probably say this, we've seen the slow emergence of different issues in different children and staff too, as you say, as they've come to terms with what we've just been through and what we are continuing to go through. And I suspect this might go on for years and years to come.
I agree. The Wheeler programme, I think I mentioned it slightly earlier, but that's another way that Wellington College are working hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've been very active, even over the summer, I believe, doing summer courses.
That's right.
Do you want to tell me a little bit more about what that's? I think you mentioned it as well. It's your 74 students that are involved in the programme. That's
right. And the Wheeler programme is, I'm bound to say this, I'm totally biased, it's absolutely brilliant. So Independent State Schools Partnership is to deliver, I suppose, courses and support to a big number of children. So over the course of a year, maybe 2,000 pupils at our partner schools would get something out of the Independent State Schools Partnership. Our Teaching Schools Partnership is teacher to teacher, so it's teach meets, it's professional support, it's sharing of resources. The Wheeler programme was designed ago to engage with 20 young people from our partner state schools who were identified by teachers at their partner state schools as children of potential, but who would benefit from long-term and ongoing intervention from this programme. And so it is a 5-year programme, and you start in year 9. So we have our first cohort 4 years ago was just 20 pupils, 20 year 9 pupils. And they came to Wellington for a couple of residential weeks, and we did some teaching with them. We did some coaching. We did some leadership training with them. And the idea was to give them a little bit of the breadth and holistic challenge of what a Wellington education normally is. And then to do it over 5 years. So the following year, they moved into year 10, and then we recruited another cohort of 20 in year 9. So we had 40 on the programme. We've lost 6 over the course of the last 4 years. So we're now 74 on the programme. And
I understand. Yeah.
The top year are now in the upper 6th at their respective schools. And what we've done is, because of the we haven't recruited another 20 this year into year 9, so we should be 100 now, but we decided not to because the programs had to move online. But it's absolutely amazing. So our first cohort of Wheeler's program kids are now in the upper 6. We've got Oxbridge candidates that we're giving extra support to. And
I saw, and you've been giving them practice interviews. things that perhaps they wouldn't always have the preparation, the full
Absolutely.
preparation.
So it would be subject-specific extension, reading lists, interviews, resources, work, support with writing their UCAS or putting their UCAS.
Which is a fine art
together.
in itself.
Absolutely, and the theory behind the Wheeler program was just to have an ongoing long-term relationship with an increasingly large group of kids who could benefit not just from a one-day course here or there, but a 5-year program and it is a remarkable program and funded originally by one of our parents who said, well, look, James, very happy to give you some money for the Prince Albert Foundation, but that's only going to impact one student.
Yeah.
I would quite like you to create a program that's going to impact 100 students. So that was the genesis of the program, and it's absolutely brilliant.
And the funding, is there fundraising for it?
Yeah, so there is, but we will. It's got to the stage now where it's been such a success that we will continue to support it out of our own funds because it's so worthwhile.
Successful program.
Yeah,
and an amazing opportunity.
It is. I have engagement on Twitter with a mum of one of the Wheeler kids who's in Wales. He's at a state school in Wales that we have a relationship with, strangely through a governor connection, and she says it's just absolutely transformed her son's life, really, this ongoing engagement with the Wheeler program. And actually, just going back to talk about the impact of some of these partnerships, this school in Wales, Archbishop McGrath, they haven't had any upper six pupils get into Oxford or Cambridge for 10 years. And last year, 3 of their upper six got offers at Oxford and Cambridge. And
wow.
The ability.
Well, I imagine that the children that are on the programme can then share also what they've been learning through the opportunity with the other young people in their cohorts.
You would hope so. It's often called the ripple effect, isn't it? And you would hope so. But that brings us as much pride. The support that we can give and that sort of success. It gives us as much pride as the success of our own Wellingtonians here in Crowthorne, because everyone benefits if through all of this work. Schools, the education system, young people, they all benefit. So there are no losers, I think.
No, I think it's incredible work, and I understand that many of the staff are very keen to participate in all the different schemes as well at Wellington, and take a very active part in sharing their expertise and trying to help as many people as they can within the Wellington community and beyond.
Yeah, it is a real priority of mine that teachers who come and work at Wellington, of course, their primary focus will be on what they're doing here in Crowthorne, but this outward facing work, this partnership work, this understanding that you give as generously outwardly as you do inwardly, that's a key part of being a teacher at Wellington. That's something I'm absolutely passionate about, and you're absolutely right. We've got dozens of teachers who volunteer regularly, and they don't get paid extra, they don't get any credit. No. They're doing it because they feel that it's the right thing to do, and they're passionate for it.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to just ask you one question. You commented recently on Twitter about the BBC suggestion that students going forwards, it's suggested, will be judged on their actual performance in exams and not on their predicted grades.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask my views are irrelevant really here, but how do you see this being beneficial to young people going forwards?
I think the the dance that all schools do with their upper six cohort and their upper six parents around predicted grades, it's ridiculous. So all of this discussion and, oh, couldn't you put that B up to an A, Mr. Dahl, and then you have this remarkable it's not actually focused on anything educational. It is just a sort of a negotiation for months and months and months, and it would be so much more preferable, I think, to allow children to really thrive and enjoy the intellectual challenge of the upper six and just do their learning, do their exams, and then once they've got their grades, then to know what they can go on to do at university makes so much more sense than this system that we have, where you're based on predicted grades, but they're not quite what we think they're going to get. They're sort of best case scenarios, and some of them might have been negotiated upwards, and it's just a silly dance that schools do every year.
And I've also, because through my work, I also now am speaking to universities as well, and I understand that there's suggestions that going forwards, I think probably linked to this, that universities will start in January. I imagine that's something that you probably would support as well.
I think I do, Chloe. The university, God, I don't want to sort of put all the blame on the universities here, but they have been something of an immovable object in this debate in the past. But I think even they understand that something's going to have to shift for this to happen. So, one of the models, there's a number of models possibly going forward, but one of the models is get your results in August and then do the UCAS process then for a January start. Whether you could still do the UCAS process.
It would be a massive shift in the academic calendar, wouldn't it?
A huge shift, a huge shift. But I genuinely think that the universities miss out on some absolutely terrific kids at the moment who perhaps don't get the predicted grades that they go on to secure, and then end up underselling themselves. And there's just so many reasons to do the university admissions process once everyone's got their grades in their pocket, rather than on this, well, student X might get two A's and a B and student Y might not. And well,
sometimes it can boil down to, I mean, I'm going back a very long time because I'm too old now, but I remember in my economics paper having something come up that I just wasn't expecting. Kind of all sorts of things can go on, can't they, that can affect these things. A final point before I let you go. I loved the odd socks that you shared with us. But you described recently Wellington College in the Good Schools Guide as a school with a mind, heart and a constant fizz, which is a wonderful and inspiring way of describing the learning environment. But do you want to just give an example that perhaps you've witnessed recently of this fizz that you see at Wellington?
Yes, it's slightly more difficult to deliver the fizz when COVID restrictions are upon us. But do you know what? I think the thing that really brought it home for me was our speech day last year. So Wellington speech days are when they're done physically, that we have this great big a big top at college, and we put the pupils at the heart of our speech day. We don't have long speeches from guest speakers. We have a rerun of the entire academic year through poetry readings and drama and music and performance and the arts. And of course, we went online this year and had to deliver it virtually. But we put together remarkably, I mean, Wellingtonians are utterly amazing. We put together, dance shows or dance pieces that were choreographed individually at home and were shot by people's parents and then were sent in and spliced together. And it was just utterly remarkable to see that creativity and that ingenuity and that life and and fizz that characterises
and the variety, I imagine.
And absolutely was still delivered online. So I'm pretty sure it's on Vimeo. So if people were to Google Wellington Speech Day 2020, do have a look at it. It's absolutely amazing.
I'm going to have a look. Thank you so very much for giving up your time to talk to me and hopefully to many listeners as well. I can only say that the work that Wellington College are doing is so inspiring, and I very much hope that it will be helping so many children to close the learning gap that perhaps they've been suffering with since the pandemic, and if not before.
Well, Chloe, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. It's really, really important work, and there's lots still to do, and it's a core facet of what modern Wellington is, and we will continue to drive forward on it.
Thank you once again to James Dahl for coming on and speaking to us today. I do hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the Education Corner, and stay tuned for episode 3 coming soon.